The 7 dimensions of ABA. We are going to cover one of the most foundational papers in the entire field of applied behavior analysis. The article written by Baer, and Risley in 1968, where they defined what makes a study or intervention truly applied behavior analysis. They proposed 7 defining characteristics, often called the 7 dimensions of ABA. These dimensions act as quality criteria for our science. In other words, they help us answer questions like, is this really ABA? Is this intervention scientifically sound? Are we actually improving people's lives? If an intervention or study meets these dimensions, we can be confident that it reflects the core values and methodology of behavior analysis. First dimension, applied. When we say something is applied, we mean that it focuses on behaviors that matter to people's lives. ABA is not just studying behavior in the abstract. Instead, we focus on socially significant behaviors. And these are behaviors that improve a person's ability to function in the real world. Some examples include social skills, communication, daily living skills, academic performance, self-care skills, vocational abilities, and even leisure skills. Think about it this way. If we change a behavior, does it actually improve somebody's quality of life? If the answer is yes, the target behavior is likely applied. For example, imagine we teach a child to wash their hands independently, ask for help when they are confused, cross the street safely. These clearly improve independence and safety. Now compare that with teaching a child to memorize the 25 different flowers, to recite the alphabet backwards. Those skills might be interesting, but they may not be meaningfully improving everyday functioning. The key question for the applied dimension is, does this behavior matter to the individual and the people around them? Let's test your understanding. Take a look at this slide and select which of these would qualify as applied behaviors. Independent dressing skills, reduction of stereotypy, identifying 25 types of flowers, crossing the street, washing your hands, memorizing random facts, asking for help, reciting the alphabet backwards, knowing all 50 state capitals. The applied behaviors would include independent dressing, crossing the street, washing your hands, and asking for help. Reduction of stereotypy could be applied if it interferes with learning or social functioning. Again, the key idea here is social significance. The second dimension is behavioral. ABA focuses on observable and measurable behavior. This means that we are studying what people actually do, not internal states or labels. For example, instead of targeting something vague like reducing anxiety, we would target something measurable, such as hand flapping, leaving seat during work, asking for reassurance, avoiding tasks, because those are observable actions. A useful tool for evaluating behavioral targets is called the dead man's test. The question simply is, if a dead man can do it, it's not a behavior. For example, a dead man can be quiet, not talk, stay seated, not hit others. But a dead man cannot raise their hand, ask for help, complete math problems, start a conversation. Behavioral targets should involve actions and not the absence of action. We have another practice example. Take a look at these examples and identify which are behaviors: jumping, weight loss, talking, being anxious, running, asking for help, being quiet, being lazy, making a snack. It's okay to pause the video here and we'll review the answers when you come back. The true behaviors are jumping, talking, running, asking for help, and making a snack. The others are internal states, labels, or outcomes rather than behaviors themselves. Dimension 3 is analytic. This means we demonstrate a functional relationship between our intervention and behavior change. In simple terms, we must show that our intervention directly caused the behavior change, not coincidence, not time passing, not something else that was happening in the environment at the time. This is why ABA relies heavily on data collection and experimental design. For example, we might use designs like reversal designs, multiple baseline designs, or alternating treatments designs. These allow us to demonstrate experimental control. The fourth dimension is technological. This means that procedures must be described clearly and completely. Another professional should be able to pick up and read your procedures and replicate it exactly. Think of it like a recipe. Some bad instructions might be put cheese on bread and cook it until it's done. Better instructions might be place 2 slices of cheese on the bread between the slices. Heat the pan to medium. Cook each side for 2 minutes. The second example here is replicable. In ABA, we must describe target behaviors, data collection procedures, intervention steps, and reinforcement schedules such that someone else could repeat the intervention and obtain similar results. If someone cannot replicate your procedure, then it is not meeting the technological dimension. The fifth dimension is conceptually systematic. This means that our procedures are based on basic principles of behavior. Namely, these principles include reinforcement, punishment, extinction, stimulus control, motivating operations. We are not just using techniques because they seem to work. Instead, we connect them to behavioral theory. For example, if a child earns tokens for completing homework, we should describe the intervention in terms of positive reinforcement. Another example would be if we ignore attention-maintained behavior, we describe that as extinction. This is important because it turns ABA into a coherent scientific discipline and not just a collection of tips and tricks. The sixth dimension is effective. An intervention must produce meaningful behavior change. In other words, the results must matter. Imagine reducing aggression from 40 times per day to 30 times per day. That might be statistically different, but it is not practically meaningful. Now instead, imagine reducing aggression from 40 times per day to 2 times per day. That is an example of socially significant change. And to do this, we often ask stakeholders questions like, do you notice meaningful improvement? Is the change helping in daily life? Is the problem behavior no longer a major problem? ABA interventions should target producing large, reliable, meaningful improvements. And the final dimension is generality. Behavior change should last, spread, and maintain. Specifically, we want behavior to change and maintain over time. We want that change to appear in different untaught environments or to transfer with different people. So for example, if a child learns to ask for help with their therapist, but never does it at home or at school or with other individuals, the behavior has not generalized. True success in ABA occurs when the skill appears across different settings, across multiple people, and the behavior continues after treatment ends. If an intervention only works in one room with one therapist, it has limited value. Students often ask, how do I remember all 7 of these? One helpful acronym that I've used is BATCAGE. So that goes through behavioral, analytic, technological, conceptually systematic, applied, and generality, and effective. You might also see others use get a cab as an acronym. Use whichever works best for you or come up with one on your own. The important part is understanding what each dimension represents. To summarize, the 7 dimensions of ABA define what makes our field scientifically rigorous and socially meaningful. Effective ABA interventions are applied, meaning they focus on meaningful behaviors. They're behavioral, looking at observable and measurable variables. They're analytic, meaning they demonstrate functional relationships. They're technological, meaning that they are clearly described and replicable. They're conceptually systematic, such that they are grounded in behavioral principles. They're effective, meaning that they produce meaningful change. And they are generalizable, meaning they extend across time, settings, and people. As future behavior analysts, these dimensions serve as a checklist for high-quality practice. Whenever you design an intervention or evaluate research, ask yourself, does this meet the 7 dimensions of ABA? If it does, they're likely producing and practicing true applied behavior analysis.